I'm Rainey Mullen, and this is Pen and Poet. Intimate conversations and performances with poets, both page and stage, established and up and coming. A safe space where you can meet new artists, maybe gain an appreciation for the spoken and written word. This is poetry for the rest of us, the reachable, understandable, digestible poetry.
That night, Zapata washed my feet. Handlebar whiskers scratched the itch between my legs like myth.
On the days of our births, we breathe the dust of these memories, and it scours our flesh, smooths our skins, fills our lungs.
All the dead desire most is to live in our memory. All they desire most is to laugh and to dance.
Hey everyone, Rainey here. Before we get started, I wanted to say that there are a number of instances where things kind of go quiet for a little bit in my recording with Rich Boucher. Because Rich perfects his performances, I've decided to leave those long pauses in, as many are a part of his performance. With that, please enjoy. I'm here with my guest, Rich Boucher. He resides in Albuquerque. He served 2 terms as a member of the Albuquerque Poet Laureate Program's selection committee and as a member of quite a few poetry slam teams, and additionally as the associate editor at Elbow Room magazine. You can find Rich's work in a ton of places, including Gargoyle, Yellow Chair Review, The Nervous Breakdown, and a bunch of others, and a forthcoming piece, or a couple of pieces at least, in Survival edition of Poets Speak Anthology. Mm-hmm. And Rich, thanks for being on.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Rainey.
Excellent. And Rich has done more homework than anybody else, so I'm excited about this. And I'm kind of humbled by the amount of work you've done. Thanks.
I'm honored you had me on.
So, like everybody else, in case anybody listening doesn't know you, we'll start with a poem of your choice.
Perfect. Abraham Lincoln in a Speedo. Abraham Lincoln in a navy blue cotton Speedo. The dark azure dune of his bulge piquantly visible. Lying on white sheets with his arms folded behind his head, with a playful come-hither smile in his eyes. Abraham Lincoln in white swim trunks on a blanket at Waikiki Beach, working suntan lotion into his chest. His gray nipple hair is glinting silver in the light, in the hot Pacific breeze. Abraham Lincoln leaning against the wall, all romantic. Just inside the door as you come home, wearing nothing but the rose he has in his teeth, and that big hat. Abraham Lincoln in a black silk robe, standing by the candlelit jacuzzi, waiting for you, wanting you. Abraham Lincoln raising his hips. Abraham Lincoln pressing his body to yours in the back seat. Abraham Lincoln's tongue in extreme close-up, wickedly licking a wet cherry, then a quick cut to his piercing blue eyes looking at you, at your body. Abraham Lincoln on stage at the Gentleman's Club, on his hands and knees in the lights and noise, arching his bony ass to the beat of the rock music, the sequins on his orange thong glittering in the light. Try to relax.
I don't even know what to do with that one. That long pause in the middle was because I was losing my shit and not watching, and Rich was waiting for me to...
You were doing a really good job of avoiding my eyes.
I was
trying to make you very uncomfortable.
You were doing a really good job of making me try to laugh in the middle of your poem.
It's that one's published. You know, that's a published work.
Really?
An editor wanted that and wanted to perpetuate that. A magazine called The Yellow Ham. They're on hiatus currently. In August of 2013, published that.
No kidding.
It's called Statesman-like.
I have to say, I actually have a poem in the final rounds of some weird award, and I'm so weirded out by it because it talks about me having the fan fall on me and crush my skull, and it gets really gory, and I'm like, why is this the one that you're in this? So if I win that award for that one, I'm who knows? Wow, yeah. So just jump into things. I actually know you mostly by name. I've only been in the slam community here in town in Albuquerque for about 2 years. But anybody I talk to who has been in the community any length of time longer than those 2 years, I've heard your name come up almost every conversation. And I even mentioned it to a really young poet who's brand new, at least to slam part. And she's like, I even know who Rich is. And I said, how have I not met this dude? So,
well, I'm very flattered and humbled to hear that. I've been kind of out of the scene, the performance poetry scene, either going to a slam or to going to an open mic night. I pulled back a bit over the past year or so, and my life has undergone through some changes, and I've been kind of reprioritizing how I'm going to spend my time. I'm still writing, just haven't hit a microphone on a stage in some time, except for this past Sunday, at the last Sunday chatter of the year at Las Puertas, and that was a lot of fun.
So should we be hearing more from you soon?
Yeah, I'm anticipating figuring out ways to get back in front of certain microphones and share. Not so much slams though. I'm kind of no offense to people who are like just getting into the slam. I'm just not where I'm at. So
okay, and this kind of leads into my first real question about your style of poetry. Now, this podcast is kind of an attempt to bridge what I hear and see as a gap between, the more academic and the more performance style. And based pretty much by how often I hear your name, both in the performance side as well as in the more academic side here in town, and the group that you performed in front of last weekend, it seems like you bridge that gap, but your poems tend to lean pretty heavy in the performing, and I think that's actually kind of how you label yourself as a performance poet.
Yes.
So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your drive for that particular style of poetry.
So, by way of answering that, first, what I want to do, when we talked about this before we started recording, I brought with me a list of people who I consider to be influences, both in terms of how to be on stage, how to perform and share my work on stage, and those whose writings have also contributed to where I'm at now. I'm not done, but still learning. And I really believe that if you work hard at your craft and you write a poem, whether it's a serious poem, if you're one of those people who's into political poems, if you like absurdism, dada, confessional work, rhyming work, forms, whatever it is, if you don't learn how to share it on a stage and then hold people's attention, you're doing your own work a disservice. And so people who are listening who are lovers of performance poetry are probably going to recognize some of these names, and I feel like I have to say these names to thank them for giving me friendship and training over the years by way of leading a good example.
And I think you should share these because I actually only know a couple, and I have dug all over the internet trying to find good performance poetry so I could learn stuff. So by all means, please share these.
Well, so for people who have taught me how to be on a stage, Bill McMillan and Sue McMillan from the Worcester, Mass. area, Danny Solis, who used to be from here, Leah Deshane, Patricia Smith, Richard Cambridge, Sean Shea, Taylor Molly, Whammo, Bosia, Mark Smith, Lisa King, Lisa Martinovich, Gail Danley, Twain Dooley, Patrick Washington and Evert Eden, Jack McCarthy, Rick McIntyre, Tony Brown, Chris Chandler, and Richard Goulis, who was one of the people who ran a open stage night in Worcester in the 90s and the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, mid 90s. Those guys, all of those folks have had lasting and enduring influence on me, and I recommend anyone listening to this that you go seek those names out. And as far as writers, it runs the gamut from Edna St. Vincent Millay and E.E. Cummings to Wallace Stevens and Jeffrey McDaniel to Charles Simic and James Tate. I will confess to not being as big a reader as I need to be, but I have to say those names, and that's really important. I like to believe that what I'm offering stages here in Albuquerque is different than a lot of what is often heard, and I am honored to bridge a gap. I'm really honored to. There are great writers who have gray hair and who are older than the slammers, who I would wager most of the younger people going to the slams now, if you said their names, they'd be like, who? Who are you talking about? And vice versa. And my wish is that would lessen and the opposite would increase, that they would know each other and get to know each other. That's where I'm coming from.
Awesome. So what then drives you towards the performance side?
I get the same thing that you do and most of us performing poets do from that feedback from an audience. It's not enough to write the poem. It's not enough to write the poem and maybe submit it somewhere for publication and get accepted or rejected. I love being in front of a microphone, and I was born to do that as part of being a poet.
Nice. And that kind of leads into and I don't even know how it necessarily came into being, and I didn't read the full master's thesis, but you were mentioned pretty extensively in Hakeem Bellamy's master's thesis, which is online, and you can dig it up. And it talks a lot about performance poetry, and I suppose we should stop right here. And Hakeem Bellamy is what was the first Albuquerque poet laureate. Mm-hmm. But he studied you often and found a couple of the things that you said pretty interesting. You said, on the one hand, that if slam is meant to be a force of change, that poets are essentially preaching to the choir, that you're either preaching to a bunch of other poets who feel the same, mm-hmm. or chances are the audience is already on your side in many cases.
Oh, yeah.
And which I largely agree with, but it's also the next bit that kind of caught my attention was, and this is me paraphrasing the crap out of you, that later you talk about youthful inclusiveness of slam and how it creates a culture of family unto itself, and being kind of the reason why it got me into it. I was wondering if you could chat a little bit about that.
Sure. About inclusivity?
Inclusivity, and if you wanted also about the preaching to the choir, by all means.
Yeah.
That would certainly explain to me why I haven't seen you much in the slam part, but I have at least heard and seen you now okay. in the less competitive aspects.
Well, honestly, I got really tired of hearing the same social justice warrior poems over and over and over again during slams. And what seemed to me to be very much almost obligatory applause, because there's just a circle of people who are going to read, and they're going to read poems that fight against injustice by being spoken aloud on a microphone, whether or not they are accompanied by actual actions. And it's sort of there's a phrase called echo chamber. You know you're going to be speaking in front of people who are already on your side. And so, to me, it began to feel, especially in this city, although I'm sure it's the same in every city, like I wasn't going to hear anything original. I was going to go, and I was going to hear poems about struggling with one's emergent identity in one group or another, struggling with society and how society looks at me, and how terrible and just awful America is. And all these things that seem to be almost pro forma in the slam scene anyway. And I started to feel like if I go next week, I'm going to hear these same poems again. It's just going to be a different set of faces. Some faces will be the same. The themes will be the same. And no one will use rhetoric. No one will actually bring a poem to the microphone. It'll be prose that they say is a poem. It'll be in an angry tone of voice. And then they'll take a big, grand, messianic bow, like they just saved the world. And then everyone applauds and goes home feeling awesome about how much for justice they are after hearing the poem. And some of us older heads are sitting there going, what? What was that? And so it just got really tired. And that's one of the reasons actually why I haven't been there, because it just got horribly boring. And if somebody would break out a poem that calls out patriarchy or calls out consumerism or calls out sexism or any of the other isms in some way that's actually creative, I would love to hear it. I would love to hear it. I haven't yet, but I would love to hear it.
It's kind of refreshing to hear you talk like that, because even when I started, I went to my first Indies National in Flagstaff a couple years ago, and granted, it was the last chance slam for me, and then I bowed out and was a volunteer. But it was my first time being in that kind of huge swath of poets just all over the city. And while I traveled with Damian Flores and Don McIver, who we mentioned before we hit record, and I asked him later, because he had heard me a few times, because he had been to a couple of the early slams that I had been in, and I asked him for some tips, because I knew that he used to be a coach. I never had a coach. Everybody that is in the Albuquerque scene and does well have had coaches since birth, essentially, but most of them from high school. And he basically said, stop with the identity poems. And granted, I don't think I have yet, but it's refreshing to have somebody say that aloud.
And that was Don, you said?
Yeah.
That said that. So first of all, the city has a great scene in terms of that encouragement. When sometimes encouragement can go too far, and it can become incredibly uncritical, and you'll have people propped up who aren't really ready to be propped up yet. But what he said really makes sense, and it makes sense from a coaching on a thematic point of view, as well as, he was more of a performance presentation coach, although he had a large part in deciding what poems were sent up by the team that I was on that he coached, and he's a great coach. But yeah, I think that anything any of these poets can do to break that mold and do something original and authentic and strange is, times we're burning daylight. Be original.
Yeah. And I think I may have misquoted him a bit. It wasn't necessarily just stop, but to not get pigeonholed, because all I was doing was identity based on my mental health stuff. And he said, because once you do branch out, nobody's going to like it, because they're going to come in with an expectation, essentially. So that was really cool advice.
It's a trap. Getting trapped in this mode of just thinking about yourself and having your poems all have the word I repeated throughout the whole poem. Look around. You're not the only thing here.
Yes, we are. I am the only thing here. So how about more poetry?
Okay. Yes, I want to I have quite a few poems I'd like to share. So
absolutely.
This one I want to dedicate to my beloved Leanne, who's with us. I needed her here with me today, and she's my queen. And I wrote this because we both like watching a television program called Cosmos with a fella named Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Awesome show.
So this is called After I Eat an Edible from Colorado. Neil deGrasse Tyson somehow narrates my late-night munchies trip to the kitchen. It may be a startling thing to reflect upon, but maybe we humans should be comforted by the knowledge of our place in all of existence. After all, our galaxy, the Milky Way, is really just a speck in our universe, and that universe is but one universe among thousands of other universes, and each of these universes contain galaxies so large so full of constantly moving and vibrating atoms, that if you were to try to think about it even for 1 minute, your brains would turn into burnt cookie dough or mashed potatoes. But what if all those atoms in space, still cooling even now from the Big Bang, and still without a name? What if all those small, hot molecules of wonder somehow bursting into carbon life forms over the millions of eons wound up here, in this kitchen, at just the right time for you to join them in search of nachos? Come with me, aboard the ship of the imagination, where no laws of dynamic science can prevent us from finding out just what there is to eat in here. Right now, on the cosmic calendar, it's 12:45 a.m., 45 minutes after midnight, and you are hungrier than you have ever been in your lifetime, as the edible you ate expands your horizon and turns your jaw into a whirling merry-go-round of synthesizers and taste buds. And it is in this very moment that the very notion of nachos first occurs to you. And like all good ideas, this one comes just as you are hurtling through the space-tile continuum of your kitchen at an astonishing 0 kilometers a second. Or to put it another way, 23 millimeters a second. It would take you 15 light years to begin moving faster than you are now. As the Earth slowly cools and begins to form a delicious graham cracker crust, you begin to laugh at the face in the microwave as you coast along the counter at twice the speed of margarine. Or, to put it another way, over 200 times 1/4 the speed of Doritos. Let's diverge off this path for a moment to ask ourselves one question. How did the Doritos even get here? Did they arrive, as some believe, because a system of stars made of nacho and cheese finally grew too heavy and collapsed in on itself in a furious and cosmically tasty condiment horizon? Or could the answer to this question be that you drove to Albertsons a few hours ago and bought some Doritos and you forgot? As you stand here wondering this, a whole new jar of sliced jalapenos is evolving in your refrigerator. Did this just happen by chance? Or did the refrigerator begin to evolve to survive in your kitchen over the billions of years, once it learned that its very survival depended on containing snacks that you like to eat? Logic tells us that the laws of nature and gravity must have allowed for the sliced jalapenos to exist, to be thrown onto a plate of Doritos and cheese, and one day, maybe even this very night, to wind up inside of you. And as your curious mind theorizes on all these scientific inquiries in your kitchen, just wearing your no pants and your shirt, you stand on the shoulders of those who theorized before you. Einstein, Faraday, Newton, Copernicus, and Galileo, in what could perhaps be thought of as the ugliest cheerleader pyramid ever seen by human eyes. We are now cruising through the taste-time continuum at the speed of a few glasses of Guinness, 5 Slim Jims, and 2 handfuls of cashews. Is that some leftover popcorn over there? Come with me aboard the ship of the imagination.
I always really, really want to clap when poets are done, but I feel a need not to do that.
Please applaud. Please give me lots of praise. Yes.
Well, since you brought a lot of poems,
Yes.
I am absolutely all for hearing lots of poems.
Okay. Great. I'm going to share, I'm going to break into the book of Frisky Senru, which is the erotic works,
Nice.
and also share another published work. And, yeah, we will do that.
While Rich is looking for those poems, I do want to say that Rich also grew up in New England, same as I did, and though I'm pretty sure we've both lost most of our accent, I tend to be an accent mimicker, so it may snowball in the event that you are also a mimicker, and we may end up sounding like we're back in Rhode Island by the time we're done.
There we go. It works for me.
All right. As an apology to everybody else, since most people don't really like that Bostonian-ish Rhode Island accent.
I'd like to apologize for my voice. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. This there is a senru. I don't name these. They're just numbered. Number 174. May the sight of you ever call my angels, make the devil stutter.
I'm just going to start snapping.
Okay. A couple more, then I'll do a little bit of a longer form poem. Number 159. Please sit on my face hard enough to make me need multiple wheelchairs. Number 178. Roast my skin and dine. Sauté me in oil and wine. Garnish me with lime.
All the pauses and sound is because I am trying really hard not to laugh like a crazy person.
One more and then a longer length poem. This is number 194. Throttle my pink neck as we mate. Pretend you hate Raggedy Andy. And this poem is called The Silent Killer. Stricken with vandalism at the age of 10, little Brian was terribly hobbled and ill-behaved because of the congenital condition he got born with. He tried to walk everywhere on his own, but his disease caused him to have to stop and deface some property with the spray paint can he was born holding in his right hand. His mother could do nothing but let him do it and pay the owners of the property after. When the delivery doctor saw little Brian exit his mother with a spray paint can in his hand, he knew something was wrong. A lot of times, property owners would get mad, but then they would look at little Brian's little face and see that he just couldn't help being born with a spray paint can in his hand. And so then they would sort of pathetically smile and let little Brian fulfill his disease against their belongings. The child doctors tried to force little Brian to wear a pair of metal anti-vandalism arm braces. But little Brian's disease gave him incredible strength, and he wound up hurting a lot of doctors. All that anybody could do was let little Brian do what he had to and destroy the things that did not belong to him. He had a disease that was incurable and unstoppable. Everybody had to let little Brian ruin things. Little Brian was a little boy who had snack crumbs on his mouth and who defaced property everywhere he went. And you wanted to smack him, but you couldn't. I'm sorry. But you could never smack little Brian, no matter how much you might have wanted to. Because little Brian was stricken with vandalism. And because little Brian didn't belong to you.
I think this might actually be a good spot to ask this question, because I was going to wait until after the Formula 409 to ask. Now, granted, a lot of your poetry tends to be on the funnier side, and even that one had a lot. So in terms of either the more serious stuff or in terms of hiding it in a lot of your poems, what are you hoping that folks who are paying attention are getting out of it?
That's a good question. I'm hoping that if people are really listening, that they're hearing what it took to make the poem. They're hearing the careful craft, the where I'm placing the words, where the punctuation is going, what the punctuation is doing, the images I'm deliberately choosing, the images I'm deliberately choosing not to use. All of that I want careful listeners to discern and get out of the work. I went through a phase of writing poems that were about made-up diseases. I had this sort of fascination with people born with weird defects. I have a weird defect on my ear, and so in a way I gave myself license to make up other defects and use them to somewhat comedic effect. Maybe there's some truth in some of the poems that I'm writing. It doesn't matter that much. I think poets have a duty to tell lies just as much as to tell the truth, to make up things just as much as to verify what they actually see. It's all good eating. I can decide that we don't even have a government. I can decide that. That's up to me. And I can do that in a poem. I can decide that it's completely legal to drive around naked in your car. That's up to me. And I can do that in a poem. It's something that you can do. Anyone can do it. And so that this maybe calls back to your other question about hearing creativity in the local slam scene. That's where I'm coming from.
That's cool. That's fun that you don't actually care so much if people are getting any of the deep meanings, if there are any. It's much more the folks who are there for the poetry. You want them to hear the craft.
I want both. I'm happy when I know that an audience actually is listening too. That's one of the reasons why I'd kind of taken a seat back from going to a lot of the open mics and the slams. If the academic open mic scene and the slam scene are guilty of anything, they're guilty of not like knowing about each other or seeming to like want to get together ever and hang out. And I noticed a lot of people who are dicking around on their phones at a slam. Someone's up there and they're almost in tears. And I'm not making fun of somebody who's being vulnerable on stage when I say this. Someone gets up on the stage and they're almost in tears. And I look over, and this is one of the things that made me sick to my stomach. I would see people dicking around on their phones or preparing themselves for their turn and not giving to the audience. What the fuck is that? And so I'm not perfect, and I try to listen though when I go, and I what I expect in return is craft too. I expect that in return. I'm not going to go if it's just going to be nonsense that's just declamatory political prose masquerading as poetry. There's an exchange there.
That's cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I like how serious and real people have been on the show. I've been worried at the beginning that when I have somebody on, they're just going to talk about why they chose that exact word and that sort of thing. And I like how real everybody's been and kind of...
You only got one chance to do it, you know?
Yeah.
And I've been guilty of not calling people out. I've sat there and watched people dick around on their phones or just unbelievably pay not attention at all to the person at the microphone. It's insulting.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's...
Way to make a scene die.
Yeah, and I don't know how other folks have taken it, but even when I'm at the slam and even when, granted, nobody listening can see, but usually when I'm here, when the poet is actually speaking and doing their poetry, I'm just sitting here with my eyes closed and a big ass smile on my face because I got somebody to come over to my place
Yes.
and read just to me, and that makes me so happy.
I'll do it anytime.
Brilliant.
This doesn't have to be just tonight. I'll come over tomorrow night, whatever.
All right.
Anytime.
Tea
you
it
want.
is.
I don't ask for payment. I'll do anything for free. I believe that artists should just do everything for free and ask for no payment, no compensation. Just at the command of a random stranger. It doesn't matter. You're not with me, right? You know I'm just kind of...
I kind of like money a little bit.
Okay.
I like to at least eat ramen once in a while when it happens. So
Right now you're listening to NPR, and we're talking about ramen and how important it is. Ramen is more important than anything else in the world. Amen. Want to hear another poem, a serious one?
Absolutely.
Okay. And then we'll do your request. You have a request still.
I do.
haven't done
I
that
do.
yet. Okay. This one's from my mom. Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 4. And suddenly, the pianist stops playing. Fingers come to a halt. The notes fading quick, like some small scream in a forest cut off abruptly. His bow tie snaps. He cries out loud for his mother, yelling it, really, as though his room was on fire. "Mother, please, I need you. Mother, please." And there's a rumble in the amphitheater. Dresses and tuxedos rise from velvet cushions. There's a rising hush, a rumbling muttering, and people cannot believe they paid for this. And after a full minute of his screaming, the house lights slowly come up, warming one by one, yellow stars taking their places for Act 1 scene 1 of the evening sky. And I want to feel bad for him, this pianist. From all the way up here in this empty balcony, I really do. But he also happens to be my brother. And actually, I miss my mother too.
Did not expect serious. Thank you.
You're welcome. I've come with a bunch of things for you, Rainey. I've come for you, Rainey.
Rich has done a ton of homework, so it's not that I don't have questions or don't want to know things, but I also don't know your poetry outside of what I've had to dig up online. I haven't been able to see you outside of the few poems you did last Sunday. So outside of my request for Formula 409, I am largely going to kind of let you take the reins and
Thank you.
kind of hit it.
Okay.
Anything you want to talk about the poems, by all means, we can chat. But
So as you hear me conclude a poem and there's something that you want to ask about it, we can dive into that too. Whatever you want with
awesome.
that. And so I'm going to save some time, and I'm going to do one that I brought that's actually in a different language. This is something that I wrote for my love, and I'm going to give you the approximate English translation first before I read it in French. And it goes roughly like this. I often think of drinking from you, eating of you, living and dying, and living again of you. Actually, I don't think about those things often. I think about those things all the time. And here it is in French. Pour la fougeuse. Je pense souvent à boire de toi, manger de toi, vivre et mourir et vivre de nouveau de toi. En fait, je ne pense pas à ces choses souvent. Je pense à ces choses toujours.
Awesome. I'm actually kind of happy that this is only, the 5th interview, and I've already had 2 poets now read in multiple languages, and I'm really happy about that.
Good. I'm going to skip around a little bit here. I brought a couple, 2, 3. So for those of you who are listening, Rainey emailed me, and he told me in a very angrily worded email that if I didn't fucking straighten up and smarten up and bring really serious poems, that he was going to punch me, throat punch me. So I brought poems, and I just want to say thank you for not hitting me.
You're welcome.
Okay. This was published in a magazine called New Bourgeois, ironically defunct now. I hate when magazines go defunct. This was an online journal called New Bourgeois, September of 2014. Food is delicious. We caught a wild skateboarder at dusk. The poor thing was howling at the trap at the south edge of our large acreage. This is not the way we'd prefer to hunt. It's better to throw on the camouflage and hunker down across from the library. One look at the skateboarder, and I knew he would provide us with a lot of good meat. I squinted at the setting sun, lost in reflection. I knew I'd need to clear away some room in the big freezer back in the basement, and I told my boy to run and tell his mother. After putting him out of his misery, I dressed the skateboarder right there, removing his septum piercing and t-shirt. I flayed his tattoos off and shaved his head, throwing his Stussy into my hunting bag. I chose to keep his iPod for our family to use. Betty couldn't believe how good the roast turned out that evening. I smiled at her, and my boy smiled at me, smiling at Betty.
Nice.
Thank you. It is nice. That was a nice poem.
Yes.
These poems are
Very
good.
heartfelt. Yeah.
These poems are good.
I agree. They are.
So, I want to make sure that I've complied with your request. I want to share this poem that Rainey asked me to read. And I'm going to take out the stapler. And share this poem. This is actually from my Bandcamp page. Is it okay if I mention that page?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I have it's overdue, I have to say, for an update and a new post. But I have a Bandcamp page where you can hear some of my work in recorded form. Strange work.
And I'll put links in all the liner note stuff that I can.
Oh, great. Thank you. So, I suspect you might have questions after this. We'll dive right into that.
Maybe.
Okay. No, we will.
I mean, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, yes.
All right. Just kidding. I just love Formula 409. The more I think about it, the more I live. The more I live during the nighttime, the more I live knowing only one or two things at the most. The more I come to love that I love Formula 409. I don't know how many other formulas there are. I don't know if there ever was a Formula 408, or if the future will bring us a Formula 410 one day. Ever since I was little, ever since the company that makes Formula 409 was little also, I have loved to say 409, and you know what? That company has loved me saying 409 too. And I think that's beautiful. I think it's a beauty-filled thing to do what a company that makes something wants you to do. More often than not, doing what a company wants you to do is the only real way to be actualized, to be actually free. Nothing can compare to the feeling, the undiluted bliss of having bought something and then doing whatever the company that made that thing wants you to do. Compared to that feeling, God is nothing. What is that company? What is my father? What is my mother? Was that company that made Formula 409 also my parents? Were they it? Were they the company that made both Formula 409 and me? How long has Formula 409 been in living existence? I just love Formula 409. I just do. I think Formula 409 is made by Clorox. I think it's made by Clorox. I think it's made by Clorox, and I think a lot of things are made by Clorox. And I think that when I think about this, I too become made by Clorox. And I think I'm made finally as well by the ability to love something that a company makes me. That a company makes me. A company makes me a beautiful, sexy, strong, and confident company that is a nice, clean, and classy person from the clean heaven. People talk about corporate this and corporate that, how corporateness is bad. But those people are just smelly, jealous losers who don't get as much sex as the nice companies like Clorox that make Formula 409 for me. I'll bet Clorox gets all the action, you know. I'll bet Clorox does. Clorox makes so much, they make America wonderful. And both Clorox and Formula 409 can help me to make America wonderful. Wonderful once more. Wonderful again. Wonderful more and more again. See, deep down within me, it's because I love products. I love to look at products, and I love that there are products that I can have. I'm ready to cry if I can't have a product. Cleansers, Jupiter. I can have cleansers and cleaners and things and mixtures and brushes and scrubbers, sponges, rags, mops, brooms, white rooms, rakes, pills, all of the willing solutions. I can have all these cleansers, and they can clean my kitchen countertops and counters and baseboards and personality flaws and weaknesses and bad people and unclean and unclassy people that my nice cleansers can wipe off the earth. It's beautiful. Oh, 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 oh. Sometimes I'm homeless. Sometimes, maybe once a month, I become disenfranchised and homeless. And when I am beautifully homeless and beautifully without future, I find that I'm only alive at night. And on those alive nights, that's when I'm walking all by myself on the shoulder of a grand lost person highway, empty. that's actually a completely silent country road except for the moonlight, which has its own sound, except for the nighttime birds and owls and ravens. And my only possessions are the clothes that I have on me that I'm sure I was wearing at the time I got born, and a photo of my love, and also my love for Formula 409. That's when I realize that it's up to me whether or not there is a God. That's what it feels like to buy something as beautiful as Formula 409. I just love Formula 409. I just do. I think that was actually my baby formula. I don't mean the kind of formula that mimics the milk of the full, round, and human woman breast. I mean the formula for my design, how I was meant to be. Let me just say this before I cease to exist. When I have been lost in the woods of the state forest, all of my dirty and wild clothes torn apart, about 1 mile from where my car overturned off the edge of that 3 a.m. country road, I have heard the song of a distant church, the chanting of the monks singing distantly not far away, and I have known then, in my essentially feral heart, that I think I am made by the ability to love something that a company has been nice enough to make me. A company was nice enough to make something for me. Me! A company was nice enough to make me. And I just love Formula 409.
Thank you. So this actually kind of inadvertently circles back to our conversation about, the kind of politics in poetry, where I think you do that here, but I think if I'm paraphrasing you, is that this kind of almost changes things so that it lulls the reader or listener into, fun, entertaining, and doesn't beat you over the head with the social political part. Doesn't hand it to you, I guess, on a silver platter.
Right.
It kind of it's one of those when you get to one of those lines and you're like, oh, I think I get it, and I'm not supposed to like this anymore.
Well, it's definitely
That's Rich, by the way, that's eating.
when you just yeah, you can't hand stuff on a silver platter. There's got to be some artifice to it. And I've had people say to me, I like how you said that thing and made that point without beating me over the head with it. And that's such high praise. It really is. To craft a poem that you're going to say is some grand statement that's social. And you can either do it in this completely overboard I'm just going to trail off and say ellipsis.
I'm really sad now that this isn't a video, so we could actually put ellipses at the bottom.
I've got a couple more if we have time. I don't know if you have time.
Absolutely.
If you'd like to hear a few more.
I have no time frame.
Okay,
So.
perfect. This podcast, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. This is a 4-hour podcast, and we'll be taking bathroom breaks. I'm actually going to the bathroom right now as we have gone into our break.
Nobody was supposed to know that I actually record this in the bathroom.
I'm actually, as I share these works, that's so funny. I've never thought I'd be sharing works while sitting on like a practice potty, and this is just so good it's very comfortable. It's super comfortable.
Well, I needed the regular toilet.
Yes.
Yeah, so.
I'm going to share as well a couple more of the Frisky Senru. So I've been working on this. This is probably going to be a book. At some point, I really want it to be. Of erotic senru. We've been talking a little bit about craft earlier before we started recording.
For our listeners, what's a senru?
So a senru is basically a brother or a sister of a haiku. Same country of origin, and it's the same syllabic requirement, 575, like a haiku. But you are not tied necessarily with a senru to images or concepts that have to do with the natural world. Flowers, caterpillars, ladybugs, waterfalls, earthquakes. thunderbolts. You can actually, it's more about addressing either human foibles, or you can actually use it as a comedic end. I found that it really lends itself to conveying erotic intent in a nice condensed form. And sometimes that comes out really jacked up, like the couple I've read before, and then it also comes out in ways that I'm really, really proud of. I'm proud of all these, actually. So this is number 62. The thought of your touch, this corset of violet wire I wear in my dreams. Number 91. Use your nails. Slash me until I'm nothing more than a beast with red stripes. Number 147. In the pre-dawn blue, you take what's yours. And then, the November sunrise.
I'm going to interject and say you're actually reading from your notebook, and I always wonder when poets say poem number 742 if they're not like checkbooks where they already started at 250, so it just sounds cool. You've got enough pages there. I think you didn't start at 250.
No. As of last night, I've composed my 222nd senru.
Wow.
So I've been doing this for a few months, and I'm very happy to be on that. Number 183. The meaning of life eludes me, so I eat you, and all is revealed. Okay. I have to share this one. And Rainey, I want you to lock eyes with me. I'm going to share this one with you.
All right.
Don't look away from me.
No.
Okay, you ready? Beat me in your cage until Sarah McLachlan sings sad songs about it. Okay. Those are the senru that I brought with me. And Ana Martinez, if you are listening to this podcast, I would love to go toe to toe with you one night, just for the honor of having shared a stage with you one more time, and share some outrageous erotic work. I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah. So whoever actually was putting together those XXX haiku deathmatch things, start it up again, because I want to hear these. I want to see you guys go toe to toe.
My goodness. 50 cents. If you have some extra change when you're done at the supermarket, 50 cents will give you a minute to try and pick a good baby out of the bright red and pink claw machine situated between the video rental box and the change maker. Inside the glass of the claw machine, there's a huge pile of fresh, clean, and naked babies. It's a cacophony of crying and laughing, gurgling and spitting up, and cooing and burbling in every shade of brown and pink. A music box of warbling and wriggling and goo-gooing. Pop 2 quarters into the credit slot and grab the little joystick. Don't let that Pop Goes the Weasel song and all the flashing lights distract you. Maneuver the 3-fingered claw over the neck of the baby that you want. Watch the fingers clasp around the baby's neck. Hoist the baby up and try to beat the clock as you inspect that dangling baby, as that baby looks you in the eyes. If you do not like this baby, jiggle the joystick to make the baby fall back down onto the pile of all the other babies and start over quickly before the time runs out. Look for a better baby in the pile. If you get a good baby and the claw gets a good grip, use the joystick to pull it over the hole situated at the right near corner of the console and then release it. The baby will drop down through a chute and into the hatch on the front of the machine where you can collect it. If it turns out that none of the babies look appealing to you, just make the claw drop the baby and be on your way. After all, you'll only be out 50 cents. Just don't look back at the baby pressing her hands to the glass and watching you leave.
Damn. Now,
Thank you.
I don't know if there was meant to be some seriousness in there, but, and this is kind of going off topic, I used to be a court-appointed special advocate, so a CASA volunteer, working with, basically you were the eyes and the ears of the judge, and you, as that volunteer, you're the only human being that has access to anybody in the trial at all, and you watch over kids who come into the foster system. And you don't know if you remember, but about 7 years ago when I first moved here, there was a right around Thanksgiving, there was a family of like 20 children. It was this massive family, and it's a horrible situation for all the kids. And I have to say that kind of hit a little hard with the last line, because I kept thinking back to the CASA stuff and about, you know, kids being chosen or dropped or left behind. And then that last, with the hand thing, kind of struck a nerve a little. In a good way.
I'm honored that it did. I'm really glad it did. So that was published. Menacing Hedge published that in 2013. I want to share that and thank them for publishing the poem. If you haven't been to Menacing Hedge, it's a great online journal. I think you're probably aware of it. They published it, and they actually will ask you for MP3s so you can actually record, and they'll post audio too. I guess it kind of is social commentary in a way. I mean, it's absurdist, obviously, and it's meant for, you know, the image of the claw picking up the baby. And when I do that live, people crack up, and at the end of the poem, every time I finish that poem, I get the same reaction at the end. And I guess maybe it's kind of a statement about how disposable people can be, whether or not that's a good or a bad thing. It's just where we're at in 2018. You can unfriend someone on Facebook. Like, instead of saying, I'm never going to talk to you again, or whatever, or I don't like you anymore, you unfriend somebody, and it's literally like taking the digital version of that person and just throwing them in the trash. And I want to make sure, somebody once asked me if this poem had anything to do with choice, with abortion, and I said, no, I'm pro-choice. This isn't like me saying we treat the unborn like horribly or whatever. This has nothing to do with that. It's more about people. And sometimes it seems like the mode in this golden age that we're in now is that people can be disposable. So, and I really enjoy reading that out loud in front of an audience, especially for that last poem.
I could tell, because none of you could see, but he was actually acting out a good chunk of that poem as he was going along. It's
just something I like to do. Can we talk about my birth defect?
Absolutely.
So I have a deformed right ear, and it looks different than my left. And I've often thought about... I've come to a place where I'm totally comfortable with it, and when people ask me questions about it, instead of staring, it's better than staring and not asking questions. And when I was little, I was told, well, we can get you surgery, we can fix it. And I've come to a place where that kind of informs, I think, a little bit of my interest in writing poems that are absurdists, that have to do with anything to do with medicine, and especially to do with like childbirth, and with the gestational process and anything like that, and hereditism and things that are hereditary. I'm fascinated by that in a jacked up way, and I'll admit it. So this is for that. This is I'm just going to read this. I'm not even going to tell you. It's a published poem. Moon Glasses magazine published this. A lot of people have it bad when they're born. But I had it very bad. Very worse. And I had it badder than you. I had it a lot very worse than you. When we were younger, my generation and I, when we came out of our mothers, the doctors used to hold us up by gripping our hind feet together, holding us high in the air and smacking us on our asses so hard that we began to breathe. I'm told that doctors don't do that anymore, but I'm not sure if this is true, and there is no way to know for sure. It was different when I was born. Things were different. Life was different. The world had only been in full color for maybe a week. Doctors were harsher and meaner then. They smoked while they worked. And these doctors had no fear of us. When I was born and I exited my mother, the doctor grabbed me by my neck, lifting me up in the air, squeezing his fingers tightly. He drew back with his right arm and punched me across the nose as hard as he could. I only knew of a few million other guys that had that happen to them. What made matters worse in my case was that I was a premium baby. Maybe you don't know about this, but premium babies are called that because they're born very, very early, typically 9 months earlier than the date of their own conception, and so they are very weak. I was a premium baby and needed help to get out of my mother. They had to give me a little wheelchair that they put inside of her to help me get out when I'd climb on it, and they built a little handicap ramp that came out of my mother that I could use. All of this because I was a premium baby. But the wheelchair and the handicap ramp wound up not working because they couldn't unlock the wheels. So what they tried instead with me was to fasten a truck winch to one of the tables in the operating room, and they attached some twine to the winch and wrapped up my feet in the other end of the twine and used the winch to try and pull me out of my mother. But premium babies can be very nervous about seeing light for the first time. And as most of my body was being pulled out of my mother, they told me later on that my little premium baby hands grabbed onto my mother's nether lips and tried to hold on and not be pulled out all the way. Premium babies have very delicate sensibilities, and so, as one of the stories goes, after the doctor punched me, as soon as I could breathe, I bit him in the mouth. I punched him in the crotch. I boxed his ears. I brandished a sword I found in my mother and challenged him to a duel. There was an incident and the police had to be called. It was very hard to be a premium baby. It was very difficulty, extremely umber and troublesome. Babies who are born premium produce milk for their own mothers. But in my case, the milk was soy, and my mother never took to it. She told me it wasn't delicious, and that I was a bad baby. I was a premium baby, and I was a bad one. And now I'm just here, outside, in the cold air of the city, and I'm waiting for the city bus. Always waiting for the city bus. All of us who used to be premium babies, we have to wait for the city bus. We have to wait forever.
I always fear asking you a question after a poem for fear that
Best sentence
it's
ever.
completely absurdist and I'm about to pull something serious out of it. And you are just going to make shit up as you go and make me feel like I understood the poem. That's how it's been going this whole time, hasn't it?
Just ask the question. I might surprise you. I might level with you.
All right, then. The fight back. Because you talked about your own defect before the poem. Talk about that.
About the fight back in the poem? Mm-hmm. The grabbing the mother's nether lips and not wanting to be pulled out? Is that what you mean?
And
the beating up the doctor?
Yeah, beating up the doctor.
So the only thing I really want to say about that is I love the imagery of doctors fighting each other, like physically, like brawling, like especially in a room where like babies are being delivered and things. There's like high stakes. I love the image of doctors just going sailing, being pitched in the air over tables and smashing into equipment. I don't know if you remember the Incredible Hulk show from the early 80s.
Oh, yeah.
So there were some scenes that involved either David Banner, as David Banner, being thrown into a wall of sophisticated equipment and the sparks flying and stuff like that, or the Hulk being thrown against by some stronger opponent. Same deal. And it seemed like there's a lot of occasions in that show where medical personnel were being hurled. I loved the disposability of medical personnel in the 80s sitcoms. I loved it. So I think I was vicariously knocking around a doctor in that poem.
Have you ever seen the 80s show? I think it only lasted a season or two, Sledgehammer.
No.
Oh, you have to check
Does it have doctors being beat up?
It's basically a play on all of those like Die Hard and those serious cop dramas where it's a guy, his name is Sledge, and he just carries around this magnum and is just a pompous, idiotic buffoon that I think you'd enjoy the ruckus that plays out if you can hunt it down anyway.
It's
totally
like the stereotypical excerpt from a clip from the A-Team. You remember the A-Team?
Yes.
You know, they would have Murdoch rig up some explosives, you know, underneath a bush at a hairpin turn where they were expecting some gun runners to come after them, and they would explode. And all the villainous gun runners, as opposed to them, would be sent flying in the air. The Jeep would get launched like 200 feet in the air, flipping over, and then they'd land. And then they'd all just get up out of the Jeep, like just rubbing their back, like that's all that would happen in like a vehicle overturning. That hurt a little bit. Dag darn it. We sustained a bruise from that vehicle collision.
This is completely off topic, but I have to share this story. You brought up the A-Team. That my first and only imaginary friend was Mr. T. And
it's a good friend to have.
For my birthday, Mr. T called me on the phone to wish me a happy birthday. And it wasn't until I got drunk with my dad one night, years and years later, that he confessed it was actually my grandfather. And then I thought back, I was like, oh, that certainly explains the New England accent. Totally off topic, but I needed to share that.
That's beautiful. That is so beautiful. First of all, major congratulations on having a grandfather that could pull off a passable Mr. T.
Oh, he couldn't. I'm telling you right now,
was
thinking
just
back,
awful.
I just bought into it because I was like 5 years old.
When I was a boy, I loved the show. There was a bunch of movies. This is certainly going to age me if I haven't already done so. Made by Disney that featured a living Volkswagen called Herbie.
Herbie the Love Dog.
Yes, Herbie the Love Bug.
Love it.
When I was a little boy, I loved that car. And I would ask my parents questions like, when we go to heaven, will we see Herbie there? Like, just astounding. My dad, this is when I was really little. I would have been 7 or 8. He went to a junkyard and bought for $50 a junked VW that was the same color. He put it up on blocks in our backyard and painted it like Herbie for me to play with.
What?
It wouldn't run, but the doors opened, the hatch, everything opened, and I would just sit in that and drive Herbie around in our backyard.
All right, now we're going to go toe-to-toe on this. I believed in Santa Claus until 6th grade. And the reason being, 5th grade, it snowed. My father, we bought up in New Hampshire, it was Santa's Village if you had ever been up there. And we bought reindeer food. Looking back now, I'm pretty sure it was just glitter in straw. And my father went and purchased dog shit from the guy across the street and sprinkled that reindeer food. And it's hard to argue against that.
Yeah.
Even in 5th and 6th grade, of all the kids are like, no, it's your parents. And how do you explain reindeer food-filled shit on the lawn? Because the only other option is your parents did that, and that just doesn't sound right.
That doesn't sound right. Well, I'll have to go toe-to-toe with you and tell you that my parents arranged for the Tooth Fairy to take me to my prom.
No.
No.
Come on.
No, but I thought I'd just volunteer that. I brought one more if you'd like to hear one more poem.
Yeah, we'll do that, and then we'll do our icebreakers and be on our way.
All right. Where are you going?
I am kicking you out.
Oh, I thought I was staying here, and you... Okay, never mind.
No, I like it here a little.
Okay. All right. The other day, I saw a regular man walking to where he was going to on the sidewalk across from where I was, when all of a sudden, a blue-nosed pit bull, remarkable in stature and powerful of musculature, launched himself from out of a sudden alleyway viciously onto the man's left thigh. And the bone crunch gave off a sound effect like a medley of gavels and gunshots. And I knew that there must have been some kind of problem between that man and that dog. At first, I froze because I didn't know what to do. There were so many things that I did not know. I did not know the history between this man and this dog. I did not know if this man even knew this dog. I didn't know if this dog had attacked other people before, or if this man had offended this dog in such a way that this dog had no choice but to attack this man. All I saw was an argument between a man and a dog. Yes, the man was hollering for help, but I couldn't know if he was being honest or not. All I saw was a fight between two people who were complete strangers to me. I had to decide who I was going to side with, and honestly, I only had a 50-50 chance of making the right call, and I made the call I made. I ran across the street and leaped onto the man, sinking my teeth into his right thigh and snarling. I tasted his blood through the denim of his jeans, and while I did so, the pit bull's eyes met mine. He seemed to smile at me gratefully as I chomped away. My new friend and I spent about a half hour subduing and biting into this hollering man, until I was pulled off the man and a net was thrown over my new pit bull friend. I never saw either of them again after that day, and I wonder what became of that excellent dog. Looking back, I believe that I chose correctly, even if it did make me late for the wedding.
Awkward stare that everybody's missing.
Got it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Do you have any questions about that or any of the other poems?
No, but as soon as you leave, I will have tons.
See, that's how it works.
Yeah. So...
Well, you can call me, and then you can just plug your phone into the board. And we
exactly.
Can add to it.
We'll add to it. Is there anything else you wanted to chat about before we get into our icebreakers?
Well, I think that...
Why didn't you get into comedy?
Because I have no talent for it. I've tried and I can't make people laugh. Honestly, I'm not a funny person.
You're right.
I mean,
I'm actually crying over here. It's not.
You take somebody who's got a real comedic talent, and then you put me. I have no way of comparing with these people who are just comedic geniuses.
I am absolutely leaving all of this in.
I hope you do.
All right, then. Our icebreakers. I think I've already done Hinaku with, I believe, Ana Martinez, mostly because I'm running out of short poem styles.
Yes, you did.
So, bummer on everybody. You're only going to learn so many new styles.
Senru next.
Senru.
And Pantoum.
I'm writing that down. How do you...
Pantoum. Pantoum. It's a form, and you're going to love it because it's hard. It's really super hard.
Oh, but I don't like the hard ones.
This is not that hard.
Oh, okay.
It'll put you to work, but it's not going to make you throw the pencil against the wall or anything.
All right. Excellent. So the Heinaku, in case anybody didn't listen to all of Anna's episode, is much like haiku, and the senru is also Japanese. It's not syllable-based, but it is also still real short. 3 lines, first line being 1 word, second line 2 words, third line 3 words. And those are pretty much the only parameters. So, first or second?
Second.
Second. Yeah, always number one. Nightfall keeps still the anxiety inside.
You're my fall, the naked season.
Nice.
Very
Thank you.
super nice.
Awesome. And Rich.
Can let's talk low to each other for a minute.
All right.
Super nice.
I don't have much of a radio voice.
No, it's totally good. It's like super nice.
Should we whistle more?
A little bit. So good.
I can't even keep a straight face.
Can I say a thank you?
Absolutely.
I want to thank everyone for listening. I want to thank you, Rainey, for having me. I'm super honored to be here, really, seriously. I've been looking forward to this since we talked about it briefly on the Facebooks. And I also want to thank my beloved Leanne for being with me and just for being beside me and behind me and everywhere.
Awesome. And thank you, Rich, for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks. I want to thank Rich Boucher again for coming on. I have to tell you, Rich really is one of those guys who commands a room, and he is a legend in Albuquerque. I really have heard his name constantly, so it was an amazing pleasure to finally get to meet him. He is so much fun. It's intoxicating the way he acts, like he's doing everything off the cuff, but it's so perfectly timed that it only speaks to the level of dedication he puts into his performances. You can find Rich all over the place in countless publications, from 99 Poems for the 99%, Gray Sparrow Journal, Epigraph, Delaware Poetry Review, Shot Glass Journal, Missive, the New Mexico Mercury, everywhere. So if you're interested in reading some of his poetry, search him out. You can also find his Bandcamp page at richboucher.bandcamp.com. His last name spelled Boucher. If you liked the show, please hit the subscribe button on iTunes and leave a review. That's how iTunes algorithms work. Or wherever you find your podcasts, and leave a review. You can head over to my Patreon page and search for Pen and Poet if you want to support the show as well. You can do so with as little as $1 a month. This is not a cheap endeavor, and I often say that I do this because I like to listen to poetry and have poets read to me, and that is absolutely true. But it's really about a safe space and an outlet for artists to share their work and be heard. If you want to be a guest on the show, you can hit me up via email at rainy.mullen@gmail.com. That's rene.mullen@gmail.com, or on Twitter at Pen and Poet. Thanks for listening, and stay safe.